In the first ever odd Olympic year, it really feels odd that a certain man hailing from the humble beginnings of Sherwood Content Trelawney isn't participating at a Summer Games. The first time since 2000 that Usain Bolt won't be competing. He made this track and field thing fun again. He made halfway through a regular gathering place where tons of fans like myself went wild for him and for every Team Jamaica moment of the golden era. He's one of Jamaica's most important pop culture figures, he's a worldwide icon, and he's one of the greatest Olympians ever. We'll never see Bolt down the spikes again, but with all the memories he left behind, we're more than covered whenever we need a refresher of his greatness. And man, there was a lot of greatness. I'm Mark for Original Jamaican, and these are the 10 greatest Usain Bolt moments ever. Couple quick honorable mentions. First, Athens 2004, which was Bolt's first ever Olympics at 17 years old, which should have been a memorable occasion for him as a wider sporting audience got to see him for the first time. But he missed out on the 200 meter final, and back and leg problems really hampered him throughout, making it more a learning experience than anything else. And then there's the 2013 World Championships, which was probably the most ho-hum of his World Championship victories. But still mighty impressive, sweeping the medals for the third of 4 different times at the Worlds. Now, onto the list. Number 10, his last race in Jamaica. This should have been Usain Bolt's final send-off, a proper culmination of his once-in-a-lifetime career that inspired millions and brought an unprecedented level of pride and joy to Jamaicans worldwide. We know what his actual final send-off was at the 2017 World Championships, which he only participated in to honor his Puma deal, and that couldn't have ended more disastrous. It was the most undeserving end to an all-time great career in any sport ever. But at least he'll have this. On June 10, 2017, the GO.A.T ran his final race in his homeland. It was an emotional night in front of 30,000 strong at the National Stadium. It felt like a spectacle. It was a spectacle as his fans, the fans that stuck with him through thick and thin over a decorated 15+ year career, waved goodbye to their hero. Through the records, through the adversity, through everything, the fans wanted him to feel every ounce of genuine emotion they had for a man that put Jamaica on the map more than any other since Robert Nesta in his prime. The race itself really didn't matter, he pretty much coasted to victory. It was more about the pageantry, the gratitude, and the dancing on Bolt's part afterwards. One of the greatest nights in the history of the National Stadium on an occasion that felt more like a party than a sporting event. This was our grand thank you to the greatest to ever do it, and he accepted it gracefully. Number 9, Boys and Girls Champs 2003. One of the first times when Bolt really announced himself as a force to be reckoned with. He showed some flashes of his capabilities in sprint during his primary school days, but it was at William Knibb where this dabbling in the sport went from doing it for fun to maybe making a decent career out of it. After trying out other sports during his early high school years, Bolt was encouraged to try track and field events, and by 2001, he was running his first proper international competition at the 2001 World Youth Championships. For William Knibb, he won 200 meter silver at the 2001 Boys and Girls Championships, but it was 2 years later when he truly made his mark. At the 2003 edition, Bolt broke the 200 meter record with a time of 20.25 seconds to claim gold. However, it was in the 400 meters, oddly enough an event Bolt was never a fan of, where he shone the most, as the proud Trelawney native shattered the boys' 400 meter record, running 45.35 seconds, shaving a full second off the previous record. This record wouldn't be broken until Javon Donkeyman Francis broke it running for Calabar in 2014, but this was one of the first instances of Bolt showing his limitless potential in front of his home crowd. But it wasn't the first. Number 8, the 2002 World Junior Championships, where Bolt first showed Jamaica and the world just how dominant he could be. In front of 36,000 fans at the National Stadium during the 2002 World Juniors, this was the perfect stage for a then 15-year-old Bolt to prove his worth for a nation who at the time wasn't quite the juggernaut at all age levels of track and field they are now. As the man himself said in his 2016 biopic, I Am Bolt, he was very nervous heading into this race. The weight of expectation in front of your home crowd can be intimidating for anyone, let alone a high schooler competing in one of his first international tournaments. He couldn't stop moving, he was antsy, he couldn't put on his shoes properly. He basically had every emotion you could expect for someone not far removed from puberty. But once the starting gun went off, all of that went away. And as soon as he turned the bend, he broke away from the rest of the pack as he so typically did throughout his career, won gold, and then saluted a frenzied crowd afterwards in celebration. Bolt himself said that this was his best moment because this achievement was in front of his people, winning his first international gold medal while showing just how legit he was to the world. Also, shout out to the other gold medal winning run from that championship for Jamaica, the girls 4x100, with Simone Facey anchoring the girls 4x1 team of Sharon Simpson, Anisha McLaughlin, and Keron Stewart. Number 7, the 2011 World Championships. This championship was a tale of two extremes as Usain Bolt stunned audiences in the most awe-inspiring and gasp-inducing ways imaginable. Let's start with the latter. Of course, as you all remember, the 2011 Worlds in Daegu was where the most shocking false start in the history of track and field happened, when Usain Bolt, of all people, jumped early. The craziest part about it wasn't the false start itself, but the fact Bolt knew he messed up immediately and made a scene of it. He knew he made a mistake. He took off his shirt and screamed at himself in fury as he couldn't believe what he just did. It paved the way for Johan Blake to prove his worth on the big occasion, keeping World Championship gold around the Jamaican's neck with his win, but that achievement was overshadowed by Bolt's untimely burst from his mark. Thankfully, Bolt, like other sporting legends, had a very sharp memory, and he just ran his 200 meter and 4x100 races as if nothing happened. He set a world-leading time for that year by winning the 200 meters in 19.40 seconds, before he and Blake teamed up to finish off a dominant 4x1 display, which saw Jamaica smash the world record, winning in 37.04 seconds. That's what the best of the best do. When adversity hits, they respond with a vengeance, and few did that better than the Hugo Boss. Number 6, Bolt's first world record. Though he was clearly ascending into one of the world's best, 2004 to 2007 was a bit of a mixed bag for Bolt. We touched on the 2004 Olympics where Bolt just wasn't ready to compete at that level as his body was giving up on him too quickly. A year later at the 2005 World Championships in Helsinki, Bolt injured himself in the 200 meter final. Then there was the 2007 Worlds when, despite his best efforts, he couldn't quite catch Tyson Gay in the men's 200 meter final, settling for silver. By 2008, the question was whether Bolt could take that next step towards greatness. But to give himself more chances ahead of an Olympic year, Bolt wanted to try his hand at the 100 meters, something his coach, the legendary Glenn Mills, refused to sanction for a while. However, through sheer persistence, Bolt convinced Mills to let him run it, and by the following spring, he more than validated that decision. On May 31st, 2008, at the Reebok Grand Prix in New York, Bolt was undeterred by the bright lights and the rain and took a big bite out of the Big Apple, setting a new world record in the men's 100, previously held by teammate and friend Asafa Powell. For the longest time, Powell was considered Jamaica's biggest hope in the sport and still kinda was at the time. But Bolt's amazing performance at that meet showed just how much of a dual threat he could be and paved the way for the greatest stretch of his career. Number 5, Bolt versus Gatlin at the 2015 Worlds. The men's 100 meter showdown between Bolt and 2004 Olympic champion Justin Gatlin was so hyped that it was billed by the UK and Jamaican press in particular as good versus evil. Gatlin was enjoying a career renaissance after serving a drug suspension in the late 2000s, besmirching his image in the sport after for a while being one of its most promising figures. After winning bronze at London 2012, Gatlin went through the best stretch of his career, to be honest, even beating Bolt at a Diamond League event in 2013. But this was the big time, and considering he was having a better 2015 season than Bolt up to that point, there was legitimate fear from many of Bolt's supporters and the media that this would be Gatlin's time to knock Bolt off his perch. Heck, even the semi-finals in 2015, Bolt, who hadn't run much all season due to injuries, ran 9.96 compared to Gatlin, who sleptwalked to 9.77. However, when it came time for the final, while everyone feared that Gatlin would take Bolt's world championship with ease, it was actually Gatlin who felt the fear a little bit. In I Am Bolt, Bolt talks about the warm-up ahead of the final, where Gatlin comes over to him trying to dap him up and engage in conversation. In Bolt's eyes, that was a sign of doubt, seeing a nervousness in his eyes that he wasn't as confident as his image showed. That was all the extra motivation that Bolt needed for that final. In a race that went right down to the wire, Bolt got just enough in the last 10 meters to beat Gatlin on the line, himself running 9.79 to Gatlin's 9.8. And to show you just how much this meant to people, one of the British commentators at the time quipped, "He saved his title, he saved his reputation, and he may have even saved his sport." Wonderful. And yes, Gatlin did finally get his one on Bolt in 2017 and shushed a booing crowd doing so, but his classy "Hail the King" gesture to Bolt afterwards was acknowledging just how hard he had to work to beat the greatest of all time at a major competition, and true mutual respect was earned between the two men. Number 4, Rio 2016. This should have been Bolt's last major race in truth. If there was any place where he deserved a full coronation and could go out on his own terms, it was the 2016 Summer Games in Rio de Janeiro. This was essentially Bolt saying thank you to the stage that made him an international superstar, and he did so as only he could. While the final product was as smooth as you'd expect, the journey there was anything but. As we said before, Bolt is one of the best ever to bounce back from adversity. He just had a natural knack for it. But this was arguably the most adversity he had to face in sporting terms. After the 2015 Worlds, Bolt skipped the rest of the season, and in 2016, again, he ran sparingly as he took care of some injury concerns and got in shape ahead of his final Olympics. However, during the trials, Bolt suffered a hamstring injury during a semi-final, and the entire island held its collective breath. Thankfully, it wasn't serious, and Bolt actually got some bulletin board material out of the fallout after perennial trash talker Mike Rogers said he hoped that Bolt would be beaten and put in his place while questioning why he should get a pass for the Olympics after his injury. That was all the fuel Bolt needed, and he got straight to work. The 100 meter, no sweat. He won it comfortably ahead of Gatlin, Johan Blake and co. to become the first ever sprinter to win the Olympic men's 100 meter 3 editions running. He followed that up by giving us an all-time meme in the semi-final of the 200 meters before winning that final with relative ease. And then, of course, the 4x100, anchoring the team to gold and securing what should have been a triple-triple. More on that in a bit. But still, 3 Olympics, won every race that counted, and gave us unbelievable memories throughout. One of the greatest Olympians ever. Number 3, London 2012. In a way, London has become like a second home for Bolt, and his showing at the 2012 Olympics was what formed that bond between him and those people. While the top 2 on this list were what made Bolt a legend, it was the London Olympics that fully cemented Bolt as the GOAT. Remember our overcome adversity theme? It's going to play out a few more times in this video. Over a month before the games, Bolt was involved in a minor car accident. Then, less than a month before the games, at the Olympic trials, Bolt looked out of shape. During this time, there were questions about his party lifestyle and commitment, and those questions grew louder after those trials. Going up against the informed Blake, who may have been Bolt's biggest rival when you think about it, Bolt lost out on the 100 meter national title. Okay, it happens. Blake's good. Just shake it off for 2... Wait a minute. Did Blake just beat him in the 200 meters too? Indeed he did. And that movement proved to be the moment that shook Bolt out of his slump. As much as he loves the 100, the 200 was like the child he never had until Olympia came along. He took that super personally, and in his words, he put in a ton of work each day in the build up to London that he kept vomiting. That work paid off and then some. He needed every bit of his best in this field. Bolt, Blake, Asafa, Gatlin, Gay, Richard Thompson. This was as stout a field as there ever would be on this stage, and he knew nothing less than 100% would be acceptable. And boy, did he bring it. Bolt's start was what it always was, underwhelming, but nobody found a burst at the halfway mark like Bolt did, and he pulled away in superb style, winning with the second fastest 100 meters ever at 9.63. Just when he's down for the count, he has 3 Mike Tyson in his prime type haymakers in him to hit back with, and that's what immortalized him as a true track icon. Then came the 1-2-3 in the 200, which saw Bolt give Blake the famous shush at the line as a retort to Blake doing a similar gesture at the trials, and it also saw Warren Weir's rise to prominence. And of course, the 4x100 where Bolt anchored the second world record-breaking 4x100 relay in as many years, a record that still stands today. Sheer perfection. Number 2, Beijing 2008. The event when a megastar was born, where records were broken, and where Team Jamaica's golden era truly went into overdrive. His record run in May of that year was a precursor to bigger things, but even then, there was no guarantee Bolt would win this race. Not with Tyson Gay at the peak of his powers, not with his own teammate Asafa Paul not far removed from his record-breaking form, and looking for his Olympic breakthrough after missing out on the medals 4 years earlier. However, Gay surprisingly missed out on the final, taking away a potential roadblock. So instead of the focus mainly being on the competition, the real question was whether or not Bolt could win gold and beat his own world record. Yes and yes, he replied emphatically. Not only did he win with ease, he gave an iconic and equally controversial celebration, pulling up and beating his chest with 20 meters to go and still beating the record by 0.03 seconds. Though he cemented his stardom with that race, the celebration drew ire from the media and Olympic chief Jack Rogge, who classed it as disrespectful. To me, it meant nothing. Bolt is not only the greatest athlete in track of all time, he's the greatest entertainer. He's a showman. He embraces the spotlight. He made To the World super popular, and he added some personality to a sport that really needed it at the time. He became a pop culture sensation, and track and field truly was our national sport because of it. Then came the 200 meter final, which was even more so a race between himself and the clock, and unlike the 100, this went right to the wire. He stretched every muscle, burnt every bit of energy to get to that finish line as he chased down Michael Johnson's record of 19.31, and he just got there, edging it by 1/10 of a second and completing a historic double. But as fantastic as his individual exploits were, there's a bit of a poison chalice with Beijing because of what happened retroactively with the relay. What should have been 3 of 3 with 3 records and a triple as mentioned earlier, and what also should have been a Asafa Powell's shining moment was taken away because of Nesta Carter's failed doping test. It robbed Bolt of that triple, but still it doesn't take away from any of his brilliance at the Olympics, and I don't know if we'll ever see such a stretch like this on the Olympic stage by a sprinter. Top tier stuff. And number 1, 9.58 and 19.19. I don't have to tell you when, I don't have to tell you the competition, because whenever I or anyone else say the times 9.58 and 19.19, you know exactly where they happened, you know the year, you know how the race went from start to finish, you know all of it. What Usain Bolt did in Berlin in the summer of 2009 was breathtaking. It left you without words. It was truly an out-of-body experience, and an achievement that, dare I say, will never be replicated. And considering the fact he was in a more serious car accident just months earlier, which he thankfully only escaped with a few scratches, it added just a bit more wow to two of the greatest wow moments in sports. The 100 meter was Bolt's answer to the long-running "what would have happened if he didn't let up in Beijing" question that kept going around ever since his 9.69 showing. He was on a mission to leave absolutely no doubt, to prove that what he did the year before was just an appetizer, and this was a full-course meal with some expensive champagne on the side to boot. From start to finish, this was Bolt's most complete race. Perfect form, going full throttle, leaving his opponents in his wake, and boom, 9.58 seconds. He had to double take at the timer when he did it. The man himself has said that given the times these younger athletes have been running since his prime though, he believes it's a record that can be reached, but I sincerely doubt it. You never say never cause it's sports, but this, it would take something superhuman to even come close to that record. let alone beat it. Much like the year before, the 19.19 was a one-on-one between Bolt and the clock, and Bolt this time ran this one with more ease than before. Blake came close to this a few years later, running 19.26, but again, it would take something extra special to beat this mark. You don't even need to ask about the 4x1. It's another world record to cap off the greatest single performance in the history of track and field. What else do you expect from a man who was simply born to do this, and to do it at an unprecedented level? What did we do to deserve you, man? We miss seeing you run, but the memories and legacy you left behind will forever be cherished. Thank you, GOAT. And that's our list, ladies and gents. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Did we miss any moments? Did you agree with the order? Let us know as always. Remember to check out our merch on Teespring. Also check us out on Facebook and Instagram, 876411JA. Check out our other channel, 876411 Studio, to see some of our other shows such as Exposed and the 876411 Review Show. I'm Mark, and I will see you next time.